during the Callahan, actually throughout the pay-per-view, I had received texts from some top guys in the business, Chris being the upper echelon of that, of course, and kind of, Chris saying, hey, this is a great match. Wow, this is awesome. Great pay-per-view. I don't think I ever had a vision for this place, or we ever had a vision that it was going to be the next ECW at all. But, you have this Callahan, the way Callahan wrestles is very conducive to some of the more hardcore elements. Well, and we want to do some kind of breaking news here and share some news with all of your listeners and your followers.
Welcome to WrestleTalk Insider with Don Callis, the co-executive vice president of Impact Wrestling. We haven't actually spoken for a while, Don. And since the last time, there's been Slammiversary, there's been all the crazy street fights on TV. How's it all been going over in Impact Land?
It's been going great, man. Slammiversary was I think, a seminal breakthrough moment for the company. I was able to sit ringside, as you know, and do the color commentary for it with Josh Matthews. And the energy in the building was unlike anything I've experienced since I started here on January 1st. And just an incredible crowd. And what a lot of people are saying is the best North American pay-per-view, best live wrestling show so far this year. Really delivered. Everyone hit it out of the park, and what I really liked about it was the card really built. I'd see a match and I'd say, this guy or this person can't follow this person because that was just too good, and then they just kept raising the bar, man. So it was an awesome pay-per-view.
Yeah, because there was that bloody hardcore brawl of LAX versus the OGs, and you're like, well, Sami Callihan and Pentagon Jr. are going to have a tough time following that. And they went to have one of my favourite matches of the month, and that is G1 month. I thought that was an exemplary match.
Yeah, I thought, I liked all the matches. Probably if I had to choose a favorite, I'd be like a lot of people and say the Mask versus Hair, Sami Callihan versus Pentagon. Sami Callihan, who of course is going to be bringing his unique brand of violence to the UK in September for WrestleMediaCon. But and I thought Austin Aries and Moose had a totally different kind of match in the main event without a lot of, gimmicks or hardcore. But I thought they really delivered on a whole other kind of a match level. So I loved it. I thought it was a great show. I was telling the story on my podcast this week that I was out in Toronto one night and at a bar that had SummerSlam on, and there were some wrestling fans there sitting outside having a smoke, and they didn't recognize me. And I kind of said, oh, you guys are from Toronto. You ever go to the Impact shows? And they're like, oh my God, Slammiversary is the best show I ever saw, and all this stuff. So it's been great reaction, and I think we're trying to build on that momentum now.
I'm curious to ask about your vision personally, because sometimes when you start projects, certainly me, you'll think this is what I want the show to be, and then the show doesn't actually become that until 3-4 months down the line. And if you look back to, Redemption, and then Sacrifice, Impact really seems to be solidifying as its own definitive vision now, as a genuine different slot in all the various wrestling promotions out there now. And I can't help but see, especially with the last 3 matches of Slammiversary, a very ECW feel. And of course, you've been involved in the original ECW. But what do you think about that, and how is it to where you envision it to be now, creatively?
I don't think I ever had a vision for this place, or we ever had a vision that it was going to be the next ECW at all. But, you have this Callahan. The way Callahan wrestles is very conducive to some of the more hardcore elements, and it's also something different that people aren't seeing a lot of. I think that, things have changed a lot, things have evolved. I mean, I knew when we came in here and we took it over in January that, we had some legacy performers we're going to have to address. Largely that's been done. And then we had to build this roster in the way that we wanted to. So Callahan, Cage, Pentagon, Phoenix, Johnny Impact, Sue Young, Tessa Blanchard. And we knew that was going to take time. It's actually happened faster than I thought it was going to, which is great because, as you know, September, we start to get into a busy time. We have the Jericho Cruise, Ring of Honor versus Impact potentially versus Bullet Club. A lot of stuff going on. Impact versus UK. So we're really happy that we've kind of found a sweet spot with our roster, which will continue to evolve. But to answer your original question, I think that the vision is unfolding as we were hoping, but I think it's happening maybe a few months faster than we had hoped.
We brought up one name there, and so Bound for Glory, Impact's traditional WrestleMania time of the year is coming up in October. Slightly after that is Chris Jericho's Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea. And I can't help but notice that in that Pentagon-Sami Callihan match at Slammiversary, you yourself did bring up Chris Jericho a few times on commentary, and just a few days afterwards, Jericho was asked on Twitter if he would ever consider working with Impact. And he said, of course. And, they've got the Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea relationship announced. And it just seems every week there is another report or rumor or direct tease from Jericho himself of him coming to work with Impact.
Yeah. Well, the reason I referenced Chris during the broadcast is because, and this is, the magic of social media, and I kind of vacillate between looking at my phone during a live broadcast and not. Now I kind of feel like it's part of my job to share things with the fans they wouldn't otherwise get. So, for example, during the Callihan, actually throughout the pay-per-view, I had received texts from some top guys in the business, Chris being the upper echelon of that, of course, and kind of, Chris saying, hey, this is a great match. Wow, this is awesome. Great pay-per-view. I love Sami Callihan and Penta, so I just thought like it's kind of nice to share some of that with the fans. We had fans sitting behind the announce position chanting, we want Jericho. So I can't not acknowledge that. And in terms of, whether Chris Jericho will come to Impact Wrestling. Look, like any wrestling promotion in the world, from the WWE to New Japan to us to Ring of Honor to anyone else, is going to want to have Chris Jericho, because Chris Jericho is a proven needle mover, and there's only 2 or 3 of those guys in the business right now. So obviously, a simple question, we would love to have Chris Jericho here, and certainly that's something that, with my kind of almost 30-year, I guess, friendship with Chris, that's something I'd be comfortable with. I think Chris has a comfort level with Scott and I running this company. So who knows? You never say never.
Yeah, and another one of his tweets was that 2019 is going to be a very interesting year for him because he's a free agent.
Sure.
He hasn't really got an agreement with WWE as far as it seems. It seems to be a per appearance thing. New Japan, of course, he's the IWGP Intercontinental Champion right now.
Right.
But with all the Impact teases building, and I don't know, for me, Bound for Glory, a Jericho Callihan match or something or an angle to build to the Wrestling Rager at Sea makes a lot of sense.
I don't know. It certainly, look, if Chris Jericho wanted to show up tomorrow in Toronto, I would be able to easily find something, some way to use him, of course. So whether it's something at a Bound for Glory or on the Jericho cruise or overseas, I don't know. But to me, Chris Jericho Impact Wrestling, sort of a no-brainer. And, I think when you're at Chris's time in the business where he's, been around for a long time, almost, 25, 30 years, you're looking for some peace of mind in terms of how you're going to be handled. What's my schedule? What's the creative process going to be? How much input am I going to have? So, look, Chris and I have been working on creative ideas for the bulk of our friendship. So it really wouldn't be a real tough transition. But without a doubt, look, Chris Jericho, free agent, is going to be at the top of anybody's list. And, along with guys like Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Cody, those are all names you hear thrown around. So, look, they're all great talents. They're all really wonderful guys. Anyone would be lucky to have any one of them.
And it seems that 2019 is really going to be a year where a war over those particular talents is waged. Because, as Jericho said, he's going to be a free agent. The New Japan guys' contracts, a lot of their reportedly, I guess, come up in January 2019. And there's this global wrestling promotion war that seems to be coalescing around New York at the moment. And Impact is a part of that because Bound for Glory is going to New York on October 14th, I believe, in the Melrose Ballroom. How
Correct.
Are you experiencing that with the Madison Square Garden sellout of 15,000 tickets 6 months after? Is it to be in the thick of that New York war zone, as it were?
It's not something that we kind of consciously said, hey, let's go into the New York war zone. It really was more just, you're looking for some way to build on the success of Slammiversary, and you obviously want to be in a fan-friendly kind of a milieu where you have an ability to have passionate wrestling fans in the building, where you have an ability to showcase your product to, whether it's fans, corporate sponsors, media. New York is the epicenter of that. Anthem has an office in New York. So all of this stuff kind of, I think, made eminent sense to us, even outside the context of a quote-unquote global wrestling war. It was really more about New York is New York. And, you've got some great cities for wrestling. New York is one, Chicago, Toronto, Manchester, London. These are all kind of like, and it's not even about the size, it's about the way that the fans feel and engage on pro wrestling. So New York's just one of those places, special place.
Of which the English fans are the best, of course.
Sure, absolutely. Without a doubt. I mean, and all joking aside, Ollie, when I was in the UK in February, I was blown away not just by the amount of wrestling that goes on in the UK, but also I went out to an independent show and I got to meet a lot of fans, and the not just the passion, but how nice all the English wrestling fans were, like very polite, which I'm not necessarily used to. I'm used to you're pretty loud and abrasive. So when I get to meet a polite English person, I go, well, maybe Ollie's the outlier. So
I have to yell because of the videos. It's a projection.
Of course. That's right.
So you mentioned England and Impact coming over to the UK. That is, of course, at Wrestling Media Con on the 8th and 9th. I believe the Impact shows are on the 9th, on the Sunday in Manchester. Tickets available in the link below, and we'll put a little link in the eye above my head. So we've got a bunch of exciting matchups there already. We've got Sue Young versus Lana Austin, Joe Hendry versus Eli Drake.
You love Joe Hendry.
Yep, you love Joe Hendry. I mean,
I do.
How's he performing on Impact backstage? Has he gone down well?
I love him. I think he's he's a very solid wrestler. He's got a hell of a singing voice, as you know. He's super creative and just a real gentleman and a real businessman. I really like him. I like Grado too. Grado for me was kind of an acquired taste, but I really get a kick out of his segments, and Katarina's wonderful. It's been really a good experience.
Yeah, they're a really good double act together because they are such opposite ends of the spectrum.
Absolutely.
And there is also LAX versus Johnny Storm and Jody Fleisch, which is enormously exciting for any British independent wrestling fans of the last 2 decades. And Jimmy Havoc versus Sami Callihan, which I'm already scared just from saying that matchup.
Well, and we want to do some kind of breaking news here and share some news with all of your listeners and your followers. That Sami Callihan Jimmy Havoc match, which everyone has been talking about ever since we've announced it. We have now added a very special stipulation to that match in Manchester between Callihan and Havoc. That match is now going to be a barbed wire baseball bat death match. Put that on a t-shirt, sell it. So this is going to change the face of Manchester wrestling, dare I say, forever. I don't think it will ever, ever, ever be the same when we have Callihan on one side, the Sami Callihan death machine, Havoc on the other side, in a barbed wire baseball bat death match in Manchester. I'm going to be there. I can't wait to see it because I'm always happy when Sami Callihan takes a butt whipping.
Is this the point where normal baseball or normal barbed wire or normal death matches are no longer that attractive? Like how TLC, Oh My, brought all those things together? This is like, well, did you, when you thought up the stipulation for this match, did you think, no, let's go one more than barbed wire? Let's add in a baseball. Like, how does that happen?
I think that you have two very unique, very old school performers in Callihan and Havoc. And I think that when you look at it, I think you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be a member of Mensa to look at that matchup and say, it cannot be a normal wrestling match. These two guys are going to take it to the extreme. They're going to take it to the outer limits of what is humane. They are going to go way beyond. So let's provide them a forum where we don't constrain it. Say, you guys want to go at each other. Sammy, you want to bring your bat. Sammy, you want to use barbed wire. Havoc wants to use whatever he wants to use. That's fine. We're going to give you that venue, the leash, the reins. They're off both these performers. Barbed wire baseball bat death match in Manchester. Really excited.
And the American viewers, if you're not that familiar with Jimmy Havoc, he's
Wow.
insane. It's like Sami Callihan in a I guess not in a grimier way, because they're both pretty grimy and horrible, just in a different way, an English way.
Yeah, and from what I've seen of Jimmy Havoc, I think he might even be more extreme than Sami Callihan, and I think that we're going to see. Sami Callihan has said he made Eddie Edwards a star with a baseball bat. So we'll see. Is Sami going to bring the golden bat and make Jimmy Havoc famous, or is Jimmy Havoc going to take that bat and use it on Sami? Whatever happens, if you watched the Mexican death match on our television, if you watched a Mask versus Hair at Slammiversary, I fully expect Sami Callihan and Jimmy Havoc barbed wire baseball bat death match in Manchester to be even more extreme, even more crazy, even more wild. It's going to be a very special night in the UK.
Definitely going to be a live experience you want to be there for.
And Ollie, I also want to say, and I can't talk about it yet because it's a big deal that's brewing. Not all the announcements are made. We are going to have an announcement upcoming, and I'm going to keep you on the line about this afterwards. We're going to have an announcement upcoming in the coming days where we are going to make a very special announcement about some of the UK talent that is going to be appearing, facing Impact, facing each other, being a part of this show. And this announcement of who these talents are is going to shake the foundation of the UK wrestling scene. So next time, stay tuned for that.
Well, that sounds really exciting too. So yeah, everyone, you can buy tickets to Wrestling MediaCon in the link below. Will this be available on Fight or streaming those matches as well for the American viewers who can't make it?
Yeah, it's going to be a little Twitch piece of business. So if you want to check us out on Twitch TV, the Impact Wrestling channel at Twitch TV is very popular. A lot of crazy stuff. You never know what I'm going to say when I'm on the microphone. I may even grab Alex Shane and drag him into the announce booth and see what he's got to add. And you'd have one icon of Canadian American wrestling, myself, another icon of UK wrestling, Alex Shane, together. You never know what's going to happen. Barbed wire baseball bat death match, huge announcement coming up, Ollie. I'm going to look forward to seeing you there, and maybe you and I can do something together for once and not on Skype.
Nothing like a barbed wire death match with irons and stuff, though. Just like a normal chit chat, a sit down chit chat.
Be great.
Yeah, we'll be back.
It'll be great. Well, maybe have a little barbed wire on your chair, but other than that, nice chat, lovely chat.
Just before we wrap things up here, I wanted to ask, going back to Sami Callihan and the just really quite inventive Impact segments that have been on recently. I'm particularly talking about the OGs versus LAX street fight thing, which I thought was filmed phenomenally. Like, how does the creative work backstage? Because this feels to me like it's coming from the wrestlers as much as whoever's in charge.
I think that we have a policy that we try not to, overly script segments. So we do get with the talent and say, what's your take? And so, Don Callis, who grew up in a nice neighborhood in Winnipeg, Canada, probably doesn't relate to what happens in a street fight between two kind of quote unquote gangs in the same way that a guy like Conan or Homicide or Ortiz or Santana or Hernandez can. So I think you have to interact. And that's what I think one of the things that differentiates us maybe a little bit from other wrestling promotions, and it's not a negative, it's not meant as a knock, but I mean, we are, I think, a little more collaborative in terms of how we work the creative process at the shows for segments like you just mentioned with our talent. And I think the talent feels like they like that because they have an ability to stretch their creative muscles a little bit.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Don. And remember, everyone, get your tickets to Wrestling MediaCon and the Impact versus UK show with that insane deathmatch stipulation by clicking the link in the video description below.